Hello all, hope you're doing well today. One valid criticism of this channel and my outlook could be that I'm a bit hard on modernity. After all, you can't deny the wonder of technological advancement. Many of the things that we experience in the modern era are so much more convenient than times gone by. Not to mention, I can sit in my study room and air my thoughts and connect with like-minded people, not just in the country, but around the world. After all, making videos on YouTube certainly beats working in some smoggy Victorian factory and dying of old age at 27, doesn't it? There are other small joys we have in life that I don't think we appreciate, or at least I sometimes don't. Things like bananas. I was saying to my wife yesterday, I love a good banana. Such a simple snack, good for you. You should always know, actually, by the way, if a banana doesn't taste slightly sweet, there's probably too much sugar in your diet. It's a healthy coordinate, that one. Anyway, aside from that, it got me thinking, it's only really 100 years that we've even had bananas here. Our ancestors barely would have had them. They would have relied on the good old trusty apple. I've also been very critical of the mass market on the channel, and I stand by those critiques. However, I do have some respect for Milton Friedman's pencil analogy. Famously, he gave the idea that you have lead in a pencil and the wood in a pencil and an eraser, and the simple pencil brings together lots of different folks in different factories working with different means to create an end product, people that would normally have nothing to do with each other. You have to at least respect the streamlining of efficiency that the market has brought to us. But of course I'm looking at the light side of modernity here. To my mind, it is undeniable that there is also quite a big shadow side that we tend to ignore, just as we ignore the reality of the slaughterhouse but tend to enjoy our Sunday roast. I think it's encapsulated in Nikola Tesla's famous phrase, "You may live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension," his famous prophetic warning about the unchecked acceleration of technology and its potential for destructive and even unethical misuse. And we can see when we look over the past few hundred years, you could argue our spiritual and moral development hasn't kept pace with the material. Now what this leads to is a sort of life out of balance. That's the literal translation of the phrase koian iskatsi. Some of you may remember that famous 1982 documentary. I think it was by Godfrey Reggio. It's an insight into the development of humanity and how things are sort of spiraling out of control. There's no narration. It's quite intoxicating to watch, but it does very much symbolize what's happened in modernity. In essence, the point I'm making here is with the increase in material advancement and the total lack of spiritual advancement, we're like a species that doesn't have a center any longer. When you don't have a center, your civilization loses touch with the central order, and the people within said civilization essentially become rootless automatons rather than agents of history. Now, when a civilization loses its center, it forgets the value of mythology, spiritual and sacred order, and we can see that in modernity, logic and rationality has become the new god, the scientist, the new saint. This means that our traditional stories are openly mocked. I'm sure we all remember the Paris Olympics opening ceremony when they decided to completely uproot and mock the Last Supper. Now, truth be told, I always thought this sort of display was due to anti-Western woke-tards, the sort of people who just don't understand the very of their own tradition. They're more idiotic than evil. However, with recent revelations about how the elite really think about the West, Westerners and the Western tradition, I'm really not so sure anymore. I don't know what to think. This is the Winter Olympics opening ceremony, and you can see again, they've got this satanic symbolism, satanic imagery. Now, I'm not saying I've got a grand conspiracy theory to explain all of this. All I can say is just weird, isn't it? I mean, nobody wants the weird woke or satanic crap, but every time they get an opportunity with the world's eyes all fixated on one spectacle, they seem to segue it in. And again, it speaks to a civilization that's lost a sense of its center, that's lost a sense of sacred order, and we see this replicated all around us in the broader culture. Now, what I'm about to say is one of the most horrendous and evil things I've heard in a long, long time, and if stories around abortion upset you, I would recommend pausing the video or just putting it on silent for the next 10 to 20 seconds, so here we go. A failed abortion procedure in Australia resulted in a baby being born alive and left to die alone while sucking his thumb. Now, what sort of evil must have occurred? What sort of breakdown has happened in our society for this to happen in a modern first world country? Well, one of the first things is utilising a phrase like modern first world country because we think it implies we're somehow morally superior to the past. But stories like this show us we're very much not. If anything, there's an industrial level of culling which is extraordinarily cruel when it comes to abortion, which is just going on behind the scenes en masse every day. Now, look, I know some people think, well, isn't this abortion issue a Christian thing? I mean, it seems wrong to me, but it's too controversial and I'm not a Christian. All right, I get that. Personally, I think the Christians are right. Life begins at the time of conception and life is sacred, but you can't force everybody to that perspective. But we do have to say at this point, somebody needs to start pushing back on this because the progressives have taken total control and the progressives always push for progress. So now we're getting stories that they're going to push for abortion right up to the point of birth. Now, one of the pushbacks you get against abortion is, well, what will you do with all the excess children who nobody's there to take care of? And of course, well, that ignores if you actually had proper abortion legislation, you would also live in a traditional society where you would just erase so many of the problems of modernity because very few people want to admit that abortion is the way it is. So Western women can ride the cock carousel, men can try and live without consequence, and basically women can be the girl boss in the office, serving the corporation instead of the family. Here's a politician in the US making that point.
When I was a teenager, I accessed abortion care that has allowed me to go to college, to graduate school, to receive an MED, to teach, and to be a state representative. And it allowed me to have my children when I was ready, both physically and emotionally, including the baby girl I gave birth to just last week.
It's just sickening, isn't it? How self-consumed she is as well. She says, I wasn't ready when I was younger. Well, why are we having unprotected sex then? And some people say, well, you know, what about rapes? Well, these are infinitesimally small. When it comes to the total cases, there are 1 million babies aborted per year in America now. And most of those are basically because of women like this who have unprotected sex and don't want the child, so destroy it. Not to mention, what exactly is the payoff society is getting here? The state aids this woman in slaughtering her child so she can go off and be a big girl boss in the university system, become a politician, and then what? Just push for more abortion legislation, push for more radical left-wing ideology upon the Western world. And abortion isn't the only arena the progressives have totally dominated. Education is another obvious one. I think many of us are concerned to send our kids to school these days across the Western world because teachers are so radicalized and they don't even know it. Here's a head of the largest teachers union in America calling for her fellow staff members to, quote, rise up.
Depending on us, rise up! NEA, hold on! Hold on! Don't let go of anyone's hand!
I mean, do you really think these people are going to give your child an objective and fair education? Even when I was at university, I remember the left-wing view was always presented as neutral and true, and you had to argue towards that. Anything outside of that was wrong, even evil. And this is why it winds me up when you get these lefties bragging about how people with degrees who are more educated tend to vote left. Are you sure that's because you're also bright, or basically because you've been indoctrinated by the system? I mean, since the education system has been conquered by progressives and liberals, has it created a new crop of politicians who are stunningly brilliant? I mean, look at the Labour Party. They're some of the worst politicians I think we've ever had. Here's a clip from a typical woman politician in Canada trying to get the locals there to call their hometown by its tribal name of the old natives. And you can see her energy is so typical of the modern Western progressive. They speak to you like you're a child.
Learning to say the name is just a small way we can all be accountable to healing our relationship with our nation's First Peoples. So let's go. Try it with me. Eta, Nona, Wastina. Eta, Nona, Wastina. Eta, Nona, Wastina.
Eta, Nona, Wastina.
I mean, it seems insane, but people will vote for this woman. That's where we're at as a people at the moment. Like I say, we've completely lost our way. And again, recent revelations have given us an indication into why. There's more coming out in the Epstein files. One of the latest is that Jeffrey Epstein was mailing the head of Barclays Bank talking about how TV ads on the Super Bowl were all about, quote, hip blacks in hip cars with white women. Basically admitting that it's bread and circuses which control the masses. I should add this is alleged, of course, but many of us will assume that our suspicions, this humiliation of white people we see in adverts, very much has come down from the top, not just adverts, of course, most of popular culture and most advertising we see. And if you didn't think these shadowy elites were scumbags already, well, Lady Victoria Harvey will have convinced you by now. She was on the radio recently saying if you didn't know Jeffrey Epstein, you were something of a loser.
He knew everybody that was very powerful. So, like, if you were on the scene and you were powerful, like, to be honest, like, if you're not in those files, it would be an insult because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
Right. So the people who aren't in the files are losers.
Yes.
Okay. Are you in the files?
Well, of course I am.
God, these people, man, they're frickin' leeches. As I say, remember Christ's words, lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. If you focus down on earth, you're gonna get mixed up with dark people and twisted things. Talking of people who get mixed up in darkness, Andrew Tate weighed into the Epstein stuff. He's been saying for a while, isn't it great how he wasn't involved? In the Epstein files, ignoring, of course, that he wasn't even famous when Epstein was around, not to mention he's got his own charges when it comes to sexual impropriety. Anyway, he tweeted out, here's a black pill. The evil Epstein lived his life with near unlimited financial excess and luxury. He was connected to the world's most powerful people, giving him a deep understanding and control over the world's realities. He lived to a moderately old age and is now immortalized in internet culture forever via memeing. 99.9% of you will never achieve one of those things. You'll never be rich or important or immortalized. He beat you in every single metric. You lost to a scumbag. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Andrew Tate markets himself as a sort of anti-modernity, heroic masculine figure, but in reality he is a figure of liberal modernity itself. He's just the right wing of it. He's completely aligned with the rappers and this Lady Harvey woman. They view the world through the lens of power, being the best, having all the money, and looking good. In essence, they view the world through material possessions and selfism, total individualism, which of course won't help us rebuild our civilization or reunite our people. The idea, of course, is it will just drag us back into the modernity machine. But again, this is all the result of living in a civilization without a centre. The people, the heroes of the age, also don't have a centre, and they think that they're great for not having one. As a quote by C.S. Lewis reads, where men are forbidden to honour a king, they honour millionaires, athletes or film stars instead, even famous prostitutes or gangsters, for spiritual nature, like bodily nature, will be served. Deny it food and it will gobble poison. And while the mainstream media and their government types love to complain about the online right and how it's all conspiratorial and extreme, they just lie again and again. They refuse to talk about the reality behind the Epstein files. In fact, they're even trying to rehabilitate Peter Mandelson already. He's got a special in the Times magazine talking about how he's had lots of bad luck. Oh, poor old Peter Mandelson, eh? And the Times is apparently going to start a new podcast with that Finkelstein fella on Piers Morgan and Peter Mandelson about how to win an election. Goodness sake. Something very fishy is going on in modernity, if you ask me, and as I say, when you lose the centre, many alien forces can come in and start diverting you down dangerous paths. On your screen right now is some charity drive in Utah. You'll note it lacks a bit of diversity, those evil whites collecting for the poor, how dare they? Anyway, so many people in the West seem very, very innocent to what's coming. A US left-wing politician opened his mouth recently and let the ultimate cat out of the bag.
I always tell people the day the Latino, African American, Asian, and other communities realize that they share the same oppressor is the day we start winning. Because we are the majority in this country now. We have the ability to take over this country and to do what is needed for everyone and to make things fair. But the problem is our communities are divided. They're completely divided.
I've been suspecting for a while that those, quote, divided communities will be united by a mutual shared hatred of Whitey. I think we can all see that building at the moment, and it's seemingly why identitarian voices are allowed a megaphone at this time. Could be some rocky times in the future, friends, but as I say, rocky times always awaken us to the possibility or even the reality of the sacred centre. You realign with that, you'll be okay. Links are down below, sister channel, Substack and the rest of it. Do subscribe to this channel if you're new. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and do enjoy the rest of your day.